random fights, like you know, you know, Jamal Hill, me and him meet up at 220 and see what happens. That'd be interesting to see. Let's just see what happens, Or I'm at an interesting weight where I can fight light heavyweights or heavyweights. Derek Lewis, the biggest knockout puncher in history. Um, I'm just throwing out random names, but I'm at a body weight right now where I could do just fun fights. And that's what I want to do. I want to do fun fights for me, not necessarily for the fans, but for me.
The interesting thing about that is, you know, Jon Jones talks about fighting exciting fights going forward, which is vastly different from what he's been saying in the media, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to mention the guy just yet, but he's been talking about retirement. He's talking about this was his last fight. Then he talks about fighting Alex Pajeda. Then he's talking about fighting Derek Lewis. Then he's talking about fighting Jamal Hill. He's saying every name. And to be honest with you, Daniel, the names don't quite make sense to me. But I have to ask you, um, what do you make of Jon Jones uttering every single name outside of the name that most true MMA fans want to see him fight in Tom Aspinall?
So, Jon Jones, there's 2 sides to this. What is smart versus what is right. What is smart is what he's doing, in my opinion. I think that Jon Jones, right now at 38 years old or 39, would not beat Tom Aspinall.
Mhm.
So if I'm Jon Jones, I see a guy like Tom Aspinall, and I'm seriously concerned. I know myself, right? I know what my past fights have been. I know I just came off of a long injury layoff. I know that my last fight, I didn't strike with the guy. I took him down right away, and I didn't have to showcase how old I was. I didn't have to showcase where my cardio is at this point. So I don't think that Jon Jones is wrong for doing this because I think that this is smart. I think it is smart avoiding Tom Aspinall. I
Mhm.
think if he fights Tom Aspinall, I really struggle to see him beating Tom Aspinall. So I think it's smart.
Mhm.
So if I'm putting myself in Jon Jones' shoes, how do I put myself in the best path to victory to succeed? And Malik, it's not like he hadn't done this before. I don't want to get too deep into it, but Francis Ngannou, now this brings up questions. Was he really ducking Francis, right? Was he scared of losing to Francis Ngannou? And now it brings up the question, looking at him now, Stipe Miocic, you're fighting him not because Stipe's the best. You're fighting him for your legacy. Just so 20 years people can say you beat him, but they're also going to forget that he's 40 something years old. So Jon Jones, I think, is smart for going about this way. But what is right? This is not right. You are in the UFC. You are holding the UFC heavyweight title, and you're fighting a dude who isn't the UFC heavyweight, shouldn't even be the number one contender. That's Tom Aspinall. Never once in the UFC have we seen a UFC champion defend his belt against a guy who was not the interim title holder. This is a first in UFC history. So this leads me to believe that Jon Jones doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. And
Mm.
he's doing a full circle. This should tell you guys everything you need to know. He's doing a full circle around it. He's saying, hey, the number one contender, Tom Aspinall, let me entertain this other fight. Let me entertain this other fight. Let me entertain this because he's telling you everything you need to know. He said he wanted a guy that was worth it, right? He said Tom Aspinall didn't deserve this. And then he backtracked on the statement. Well, Tom Aspinall deserves this, but I want to do what I want to do now. I want exciting fights. And Malik, I feel like now
Mhm.
we're at a point where Jon Jones is literally
Mhm.
telling us everything we've been saying.
Mhm.
He is ducking Tom Aspinall.
Mhm.
And he is showing you guys everything we need to know about why he is. He's telling you, hey, he literally said in that interview, Malik, well, let me say this. Tom deserves this. Like this isn't a takeaway from Tom. He deserves this, but I'm gonna do what I want to do. I've earned this. So I get to pick who I want. And at that point, it's like, what are we doing, Jon? So I respect what Jon has built in his career. I respect his undefeated record. But at this point, this is seriously putting a stain on who Jon Jones, what his legacy is going to be because he's clearly avoiding one guy. And if it is so clear that you're avoiding somebody, that puts a stain in my opinion. You're not the baddest man on the planet. He said he wants to fight for the BMF title. F that. You are not the baddest man on the planet if you're avoiding one dude because you're scared of him.
Let's really talk about it, guys. Jon Jones lost his last UFC fight at the light heavyweight division, and it was gifted a victory over Dominic Reyes. Let's call it what it is. He was. Jon Jones struggled in fights against Thiago Santos. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Jon Jones cherry-picked when to move up to heavyweight. He avoided Francis Ngannou and publicly negotiated with the UFC for 2 years. And suddenly, after Francis leaves, he makes his heavyweight debut against a guy that everybody knows he doesn't have any wrestling acumen. That's what was recognized. You know what I mean? That's what was realized. Jon Jones is now publicly saying, I will not fight the interim champion, and making all these excuses, and now saying he'll fight a guy at lightweight in Alex Pereira, who also has wrestling deficiencies and people know about. Beat guys in Jamal Hill, who's coming off a loss. Beat guys in Derek Lewis, who hasn't been in any real contention. What is there to gain there? You know what I mean? What is there to gain there? And so for me, it's very simple that he's cherry picking. It's very simple that he's cherry picking. And I hate to say that Jon Jones is terrified, but I do believe Jon Jones is terrified. You don't believe me? Watch this next clip.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Doing well.
You okay?
Doing well.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Good, man. Good. Have a seat, sir.
All you guys in, but
Hey, I'm not gonna do this interview. You don't want to do it? No, because it's gonna be an Aspinall Fest. I'm not gonna. Come on, let's go.
hey, bro. I see how close you guys are, and common sense tells me what type of questions I'm going to get asked. So I'm just like,
Give me time to speak to you. You want to speak?
thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
So that clip tells me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He left an interview that he was scheduled to do all because he knew the interviewer had interviewed Tom Aspinall in the past. He's a British guy. He didn't want to be asked questions about Tom Aspinall. John, if everybody this entire week is asking you about Tom Aspinall, what fight do you think people want to see? You walk around as if you're some holier than thou figure. Let's talk about some real stuff here. The fact of the matter is, Jon Jones, you owe the UFC. Jon Jones, you owe the UFC fans. What I mean by that is, do we forget, like we talk about him as a long reigning champion. Do you know why you were a long reigning champion? Do we know why you went, all this time without being active? Suspensions for PEDs, off, stuff outside of the octagon, whether it be abuse, spousal abuse, hitting a pregnant woman with your car, things that you dealt with in real life, legal situations. And you know what promotion stood by you? The UFC. To speak about yourself as if you're some great veteran that has fought all these up and coming challenges, when the truth of the matter is, you missed the entire new wave of light heavyweights that were coming up because you had legal issues. You missed the entire wave of heavyweights because you were too scared to jump in there with Francis Ngannou. The fact of the matter is, you've been out of competition for such a long period of time. So to call this shot and talk about how Tom, who's beat five guys in the top 10, he's diminished everybody almost at the heavyweight division. The one guy he hasn't had a chance to diminish ducked him in Cyril Gane. Like, John, you had so many issues outside of the octagon that you had to take care of. You finally returned after a 2-year, 3-year layoff, beat Cyril Gane in the first round, and we haven't seen you since. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen you since because you tore a ligament and you've been out of action. You tore your pec and you've been out of action. So you owe the UFC for standing by you all this time. The fact of the matter is, while you're 37, you're not some 37-year-old who has all this tread on the tires because you had so many breaks in between. It's how I feel about Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira, he walked away from mixed martial arts And, he dealt with some stuff outside of the octagon, but he's able to still perform at a high level because he doesn't have all that wear and tear on him. Jon Jones, you don't have all this wear and tear on you like you make it out to be. But let's not kid ourselves. When did Jon Jones become the Floyd Mayweather of the sport to where he's fought all these guys that we're talking about, and then he's just like, oh, I can ride off to the sunset. I can make the choices and the decisions I want. UFC's already gifting you a fight by fighting Stipe Miocic, a guy who hasn't won in over 3 years. And last time we saw him out, they got knocked out cold by the guy you ducked. But somehow you call the shots. Somehow you're the ultimate decision maker. Make it make sense for me. This is clearly Jon Jones believing that he can't beat Tom Aspinall.
Mhm.
And that's the goddamn truth. Sitting up there acting as if you're bigger and better than Tom Aspinall. Shogun Rua gave a young Jon Jones an opportunity in Newark, New Jersey to win a belt. And you did. You're trying to hold on to that precious record that already has a stain on it for an illegal elbow. As much as Dana White and other people talk about Jon Jones as the GOAT, I'm be honest with you, no one is taking this heavyweight reign seriously unless you beat Tom Aspinall. You want to talk about exciting fights? You want to talk about facts? That's what would put asses in seats. There's a reason why every turn you get asked about Tom Aspinall. That's the same reason why you got to travel in droves with your entourage, because you're uncomfortable, because you know who the baddest man on the planet is. And it ain't Jon Bones Jones. It's Tom Aspinall. You know it. It's the worst kept secret. If you're the GOAT, if you're the baddest man on the planet, if you want people to take this heavyweight run serious that you went on, fight Tom Aspinall. That's it. There ain't nobody else to fight. Everybody knows you're going to beat Stipe Miocic. No one's excited for this fight. No one's excited for this fight. Everybody knows you're going to beat Stipe Miocic. But the ball's in your court, John. What's next? And it should be Tom Aspinall. We should get security on who's the heavyweight champion, who the baddest man on the planet is. Nobody's going to take Jon Jones serious. Good luck selling Jon Jones fights after this anyway.